from the recovery ship. As we were mentioning, all of those team members that are ready to recover the astronauts are on the ship. They're in position. It'll take just a little bit for them to move in toward the capsule once it lands, but they all have a very important and distinct role to play, either retrieving the capsule or helping the astronauts egress, and they are all standing by.
At this point in time, Dragon Endurance is about to deploy the drogue parachutes. Those automatically deploy around the 18,000 foot mark, and the capsule's going about 350 miles per hour.
Brace for drogue window.
Dragon brace.
So just a call out there to let the crew know that they are approaching that window where the drogue parachutes will automatically deploy.
And just prior to the deployment, Dragon automatically safes the propulsion system and then deploys the parachutes to stabilize and help decelerate the spacecraft.
So like we said, we're getting ready for those drogue parachutes to deploy on Dragon. That occurs automatically when it's about 18,000 feet above the ocean surface, and the capsule is going roughly 350 miles per hour. In that view before, there was a difference in, here we can see, it's no longer quite streaking like it was just moments ago, or minutes ago, I should say. Like I said before, it looks like those drogue deploys are now, yep. We got
visual on 2 healthy drogues.
Dragon copy.
As you can see with that infrared view, we have 2 healthy drogue parachutes on Dragon. There's a view from Dragon looking up at the drogue chutes.
Those will remain attached to the spacecraft until they help deploy the main parachutes, coming up in just a few moments. Again, these views coming to us from the recovery ship, standing by to recover our crew members once they splash down. Looks like we
it looks like we have main parachute deployment there.
Main chute descent rate nominal.
Dragon copies 1,000 meters.
A beautiful.
Copy 1,000.
Beautiful view there from that recovery vessel of Dragon Endurance with those 4 healthy main parachutes. At this point in time, the capsule is going about 119, or was going about 119 miles per hour when those were deployed, and they also deployed about 6,500 feet. So these main parachutes will help slow the vehicle down even further to about
800 meters.
Copy 800.
So that we'll hear from the crew about how far they are above the surface of the water. So there we just heard that call out for 800 meters. The capsule is slowing down further and further. By the time that it actually splashes down, it'll only be going about 16 miles per hour.
It's fascinating to think that just minutes ago, really, they were in outer space.
Copy 600.
And are now just 600 meters above Earth. Again, we are targeting a 9:02 p.m. Eastern Time, splashdown 6:02 p.m. Pacific. So that is the next major milestone for us today, now that we have 4 healthy main parachutes all deployed. Things continue to look good aboard Dragon.
That's right. We're about a little less than a minute and a half away from the crew splashing down.
Copy 400 meters.
Once again, we are targeting a splashdown off the coast of Florida, near Tampa. So this is what we would consider a Gulf landing.
And those strobes of light on your screen, those are spotlights coming from the recovery vessels as they continue to track Dragon Endurance.
200 meters, crew brace for splashdown.
Copy 200 and braced.
Commander Nicole Mann giving out that call as we are standing by for splashdown off the coast of Tampa, Florida.
There we can see the water surface. Dragon Endurance coming closer and closer. And as you just saw, splashdown of Crew-5.
157 days in space.
SpaceX Dragon splashdown. Names have been released.
Copy, Dragon. We concur with splashdown and mains released. Dragon Endurance, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
As you can see on your screen, visual confirmation for splashdown.
Thank you, SpaceX. I was on one heck of a ride. We're happy to be home. Looking forward to next time.
Dragon Endurance has returned home, and NASA astronauts Nicole Mann and Josh Cassada, JAXA astronaut Koichi Wakata, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina are back on Earth after an approximately 19-hour return journey from space. The SpaceX recovery ship and team has been waiting for Dragon's splashdown, and now, as you can see, they're making their way to that splashdown location.
Right, and these teams have been ready and been waiting about 3 nautical miles away, so it'll take them around 30 minutes to make their way to Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna inside Dragon. We will be listening for Mission Control Hawthorne to give the go for the safe approach now that we have splashdown. There are several different roles. There is an approach boat that will begin inspections. They want to make sure that there aren't any hypergols, monomethyl hydrogen, and nitrogen tetroxide still lingering around the spacecraft. That way it is safe for the teams to move in even closer and retrieve it.
Yeah, the crew will basically approach the capsule and they use what's basically a sniffing device, a device that can detect those levels of MMH and NTO. They are toxic to breathe, and so this is a super important step to complete.
SpaceX Dragon looks like we are in stable 1, although a little tough to...
Copy that, Dragon. We concur and are happy to report that the recovery personnel have also confirmed stable 1.
Awesome, thank you.
So just some communication there back and forth with SpaceX Core Michael Blasco and Capsule Commander Nicole Mann, just to confirm the landing position of the capsule itself. As we can see there on your screen, even better now with that spotlight, the crew, the recovery team is approaching the capsule. They are going to make sure that monomethyl hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide is not present on the exterior of the vehicle. There could potentially be traces due to the fact that those are the thrusters that Dragon was using while in orbit, and so we want to make sure that there aren't any traces of those fumes, basically, so that the team can get close to the capsule. We will actually see an individual climbing on top of the capsule to secure the harnesses that are necessary, the rigging, to lift the capsule onto the recovery vessel. As I have said before, certainly a job that I would not be fit to do, as it involves, as it requires jumping into what we can see as dark water, and climbing on top of the capsule and securing those harnesses.
Where's your sense of adventure? As we heard the core and the crew communicate, the capsule is in stable 1. That means it's in an upright position in the water. Makes it easier to recover, obviously. That is the ideal splashdown position for the capsule itself. So the crew members are still inside. They are still in their suits, in their seats. They will remain that way until the spacecraft itself is lifted onto the recovery vessel. But the first ships arrive are those fast boats. Again, they are just checking out the spacecraft, making sure that it's safe for the rest of the team to approach.
So for those of you that have just recently joined, the Crew-5 team has splashed down off the coast of Tampa, Florida. That occurred just minutes ago, and the recovery teams are now moving into place.
And we're anticipating that those first approach boats will arrive at the capsule just a few minutes from now.
Dragon, SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside Dragon in 1 minute.
Dragon copy.
SpaceX Corps just giving the crew a heads up. Hey, you might be seeing some people on the outside of the capsule. It's to be expected.
Yeah, first people that they've seen on Earth, in almost 6 months.
That's right. 157 days in space. Now complete as Dragon Endurance with the Crew-5 crew. Now safely back on Earth.
Again, this was the first flight, so the first re-entry experience as well for 3 of these crew members, Nicole, Mann, Josh Cassada, and Anna Kikina. I'm sure that Koichi Wakata, who now has 505 days in space across 5 space flights, told them a lot of what to expect, but it was a new spacecraft for him too. So a lot of new and exciting experiences on today's ride home.
As we said before, the crew generally experiences between 3 to 5 Gs during the re-entry portion of their journey home. So not too bad. Just like a really good roller coaster.
Again, these views coming to us from recovery vessels off the coast of Tampa, Florida, had an on-time splashdown at 9:02 p.m. Eastern Time. And from what we can see, I would say those weather reports were pretty accurate. We had clear skies, able to see the spacecraft coming down under those 4 main parachutes and even the drogue chutes as well. And the seas look pretty calm also.
That's right. So as Leah just said, that splashdown occurred 7 minutes ago. In a few minutes, so there's still more things that has to occur. We can't just pick up the capsule and put them on a boat and bring them out. Very similar to their activities in space. Their activities here for recovery back on Earth are also very highly coordinated and choreographed, really. So we can see that the approach boat has reached the capsule. We should see. Hopefully, it might be tough because of the distance, but we will hopefully be able to see one of the SpaceX recovery team members will actually hop in the water and then pull themselves up onto the capsule to basically secure the harnesses that are required to lift the capsule onto the recovery vessel. As of right now, if we were able to see...
Dragon, SpaceX, requesting permission to come on board via the display camera view only.
SpaceX Dragon, you are welcome on board.
All right, so just...
We copy.
SpaceX Mission Control, basically just making sure it's okay for us to turn those interior cameras on. So we should get a view, the one that we saw before that sits between pilot Josh Cassada and Commander Nicole Mann, so we can see the screens that they're looking at. But as we were saying, the recovery team is circling the vessel, just making sure that there are no hypergol fumes there that are present. There's also another team circling and gathering the parachutes from the water to try and recover those as well. Once we hear the call out that there are no hypergulls present, the recovery team will be able to take off their respirators. So if we were able to see them, they would have personal protective equipment on, those breather masks, basically, to make sure that they're breathing clean air, to ensure that, and they will do that until that they are sure that there are no hypergull fumes present.
Of course, during this time, oh, look, here we are. That's our Crew-5 astronauts now back on Earth. Again, on the left, you can just see the top of her helmet visor. That's Commander Nicole Mann, NASA astronaut. And on the right, NASA's Josh Cassada, the pilot for the mission.
SpaceX is back on board with the display camera only.
Dragon cutting.
So that's the inside of that capsule we were seeing sitting in the water just off the coast of Tampa. Also on board, we have, and a thumbs up there from Nicole Mann and Josh Cassada. I imagine probably the same from Koichi Wakata and Anna Kikina, but to their right and left as the mission specialists. And a good look again at those crew displays. Dragon, again, a totally autonomous flight home. They are just able to monitor the next steps and await for the spacecraft to be picked up by the recovery vessel. So once those ordnance and hypergol checks are complete, it'll take about 18, a little less than 20 minutes for the rigging to be complete. And around the same time, we expect the recovery ship to arrive. And shortly thereafter, they will begin to lift Dragon onto the nest on the recovery ship. They'll pull it toward a platform.
Dragon, SpaceX, hypergol sweeps and unfired ordnance checks are nominal. Rigging is in progress. Approximately 25 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Dragon space.
So confirming good ordnance and hypergol checks, meaning they didn't detect any of those fumes that would prevent us from coming closer to the spacecraft, as well as we are anticipating they will have a private medical conference with the SpaceX flight doctors. This is normal routine for astronauts. They have them regularly on the International Space Station. They have them after launch and obviously after splashdown. So just a chance for the crew members to check in with the medical teams.
That's right. So that view there on the right-hand side, there is now an individual who is basically climbing, or will be climbing, on top of the Dragon capsule to secure the harnesses and the rigging that we will use to lift the Dragon capsule out of the water and onto that recovery vessel. That recovery, the larger recovery vessel, is en route. It is getting closer and closer to the Dragon capsule, so we should have some better views as time continues. But as that call out that we just heard about a minute ago, everything checked out from the hypergol standpoint. None were lingering, and so the recovery team, is okay to take off those respirators that they were using for safety purposes and proceed with the nominal rigging procedures.
Once these crew members arrive on the recovery vessel, Shannon, they will again be placed in the nest. The Endurance spacecraft itself will be placed in the nest and moved to a platform where the astronauts will egress, that side hatch being opened for the first time in 157 days since launch last October.
Might have been a false alarm. False Quindar.
So the astronauts will egress, and as with every space flight that we see, whether they are flying, from here in America on Dragon, or if they are in a Soyuz spacecraft, all astronauts and cosmonauts receive medical checkouts after they land. Again, This is our totally normal procedure, just an opportunity for them to get checked out. It is quite an environment change coming back from 157 days in microgravity back to 1G here on Earth.
That's absolutely right. But one thing that is for sure of the recovery, of the splashdown and recovery views that we've had whenever we see the crew coming out of the capsule, I've yet to see somebody come out that didn't have a smile on their face.
Oh, how can you not? They just said it was one great ride. So yeah. I'm sure they're all excited, number one, for the experience and the accomplishments that they have. But also, now they're back home. They get to spend time with friends and family. They will be helped onto a stretcher, as we've seen before, just to help them get their land legs back.
Yeah, absolutely. It will take about 25 minutes. So we heard, about 2 minutes ago, we heard that it will take about 25 minutes for the entire rigging process to complete and to lift the capsule onto the recovery vessel. We can see there on the right-hand side of the screen that rigging is in process. The left-hand side of your screen, of course, is a view inside Dragon capsule where the crew is using those touchscreen displays to monitor progress of everything. I imagine they can also hear what's going on outside as well in terms of the individual that is crawling around on top of the capsule to secure those harnesses.
It's been 15 minutes now since we had splashdown, 9:02 p.m. Eastern time, again off the coast of Tampa. Everything was looking really nice tonight for that on-time splashdown, right on the minute. That's
right. We even had acquisition of signal about a minute earlier than originally anticipated. But as we said before, it's not an exact time that we know it comes back. So we were certainly happy to hear Commander Nicole Mann's voice come through pretty loud and clear.
And of course, these checks and the rigging and lifting Dragon itself take time, and the teams are very deliberate and take the time that they need to make sure that everything is done properly and safely. But I do think it's very impressive and funny to me that within 2 hours you can go from being in space to already back on land on the recovery ship. It's faster than my flight from California to Houston. So I always think that's very fun.
Speaking of timelines, it's also been pretty incredible to see the continuous improvement of the recovery process itself. So thinking back to the Demo 1, Demo 2 missions where really that process of lifting the capsule out of the water, I forget how long it took the first time we officially did it. I think it was about an hour and a half. And it's really well streamlined at this point in time. You know, this is the fifth operational mission to the International Space Station. Of course, we launched Crew-6, but they're still up there. So this is the fifth one to Splashdown, and then plus Demo 2 with NASA astronauts Bob and Doug, our favorite space dads. And it's just been really cool to see how, as the SpaceX recovery teams have basically iterated the process a number of times, not only with the actual landings, but with practiced ones as well, with a Dragon capsule mock-up. So it's pretty cool to see how streamlined the operations have been. And there we can actually see our first good view of that SpaceX recovery team member that is climbing on board the Dragon capsule. This is exactly what they have to do in order to place the harnesses and the rigging and secure them. That equipment, of course, is critical to the lifting operation where we lift the Dragon capsule out of the water and place it onto the recovery vessel. So we'll be able to see this individual move around almost in a spider monkey-like fashion with just such skill, which is incredible when you think about the fact that they had to get in the water first and swim up to the capsule. And so Their wetsuit is wet. The parts of the Dragon of the capsule itself are also wet. So it's not an easy job, and they undergo significant amounts of training in order to perform this job not only correctly but safely as well.
And this was a similar role also existed during Apollo. Those were also obviously splashdown missions. Those were called frogmen. And so they would make sure that the capsule was secured before it was brought into the recovery vessel. But speaking of recovery vessel, as we mentioned, we have several team members that are monitoring and assisting with different roles, whether that is to help with medical checks or to bring the crew Dragon back into the ship itself. We also have my colleague, NASA Public Affairs Officer Chelsea Bayarte, who is on the ship, and she is standing by on the phone to give us an update. So Chelsea, tell us what it's like, what the teams are doing right now, and if you were able to see Crew Dragon as it returned to Earth.
Hey, Leah, how do you hear me?
Loud and clear. You sound great.
Oh my gosh. Well, hello. Ahoy from the SS Shannon recovery ship.
Welcome. I'm so glad that you were able to join us. So tell us what the team members are doing right now to prepare to bring Crew Dragon aboard.
Absolutely. So let me walk us back a couple of just minutes ago as the Crew Dragon came down. We went to the tip top of this boat on the helicopter pad to get a view. The boat lights turned completely off. You could see every star in the sky. That's how dark it was. And all of a sudden, you see the brightest shooting star you ever saw in your life pointing down at Earth. And I was amazed how quickly, after those parachutes deployed, the shooting star went away and it just became another dot in the sky among a sea of stars. But this boat had, and several other boats in the area, turned on their spotlights. They had a drone pointed at it. So you always knew where the Dragon was, even though to me it just looked like another dot. So they were very quick to locate the spacecraft in the sky as it came down. I had my eyes on Dragon just a minute ago. The boat, the SS Shannon, right now is turning to get into a configuration now that we know that we're safe from hypergulls to go closer to the Dragon. It is. See it with your own eyes.
Yes, that's amazing. Just in space moments ago, and now we are getting views from the recovery ship as well. We can see it backing up towards the spacecraft. We also had great views coming from the ships during that descent. So can you tell us what's next for the teams and what's next for you and the other visitors on Shannon? Well, we may have lost communication with Chelsea, but what an experience to be able to be there and see it. I'm very fortunate enough to have shared that experience.
I was going to say, I think I recall whenever you were the person on the phone.
Yes, it was absolutely incredible. She's right. It's like a shooting star. And great to hear, that things have been going well on the ship so far. As she mentioned, we were seeing those it looked like strobe lights almost, but those were the spotlights tracking Crew Dragon as it continued its descent. So yes, they had great coverage of that the entire time.
So we have a great view here of Dragon Endurance there with the Crew-5 crew still in their seats, strapped in, kind of like that part of the roller coaster after it ends. You still have to stay in your chair until the attendants give you the okay and lift the bar that keeps you in. So yeah, we can see that recovery team in the water. If you look closely, you can see some of those harnesses hanging there in front of the side hatch. We can see the recovery team members on Shannon there near the nest, that they're also preparing that landing area. So the part of the ship that arches above where those crew members are standing, that will actually actuate outward, and that will be the part that lifts the Dragon capsule out of the water, and it will basically bring it right over where that nest is, and it will be, the Dragon capsule will be set down on that nest, and then that nest will then be pulled forward. So kind of like if you think of yourself, like that nest will be pulled in the direction of you as the viewer, toward the forward end of the boat, and that is of course where the side hatch will be opened and the crew will egress there using that side hatch. Now when that side hatch is opened, this will be the first time that the crew inside the Dragon capsule has basically breathed earthly air in 157 days. It's the first time that side hatch will have been opened. Of course, the last time it was open was launch day, and that side hatch was closed in preparation for launch. And then while they are on station, they use the forward hatch, or the hatch that is underneath the nose cone there, which is the pointy end of the Dragon capsule. So I always love seeing that hatch reopened because it's a very nice bookend in terms of when that hatch was last closed, that was the day that they went to space, and today's the day that they came home.
Absolutely. And that journey beginning back in October and ending just 25 minutes ago, an on-time splashdown at 9:02 p.m. Eastern. And everything is really moving along with the timeline. Ideally, the recovery ship arrives about 30 minutes after splashdown, and here we are, almost ready to complete that rigging process. You can see that team member still on the capsule itself. And they will, again, as you mentioned, lift that and place it in the nest. And the platform that the astronauts egress on is built up a little bit because the side hatch is about halfway up the capsule itself. So they will egress to that, be taken out for some routine medical checks. And eventually they will board a helicopter tonight just within a couple of hours of splashing down that will take them back to Florida before they fly back to Houston, and Anna Kikina will also fly back to Russia.
Yeah. So we're getting to the point in time where, there we can see that lifting arm being moved into the recovery position. Everything's going to move pretty quick at this point in time. The capsule will be in that nest much faster than you think it will be. We can see that recovery team member that was in charge of securing all of the harnesses and the rigging still on the capsule. We should see them jumping off and back into the water in momentarily. That will be a good sign to indicate that all those harnesses are secure and in place. Although I imagine it would be kind of fun to ride Dragon as it gets lifted out of the water, but certainly not safe, so we won't be doing that.
And when they lift Dragon, it's also very stable the entire time. It's not swinging around a lot because there are those different attachment points that make it very, very stable for the crew members coming out of the water and being placed on the recovery ship.
Yeah, of course, the motion of the waves creating a lot of that movement. And there we can see that recovery team member jumping off back into the water. So at this point in time, it's a great sign. We should hear a call out soon, or perhaps just see it first, of the capsule being lifted out of the water. Again, this will happen quite quickly.
Dragon, brace for capsule lift.
Dragon.
And as the capsule is being lifted, there's our first view of that heat shield. Once again, that was the primary decelerator for the Dragon capsule. That's really what helps slow the vehicle down to about 350 miles per hour from 17,500, of course, during that re-entry burn that we saw.
Certainly did its job.
Yeah.
Bringing them to that gentle splashdown with the help of those parachutes, about 16 miles per hour. So they have obviously lifted Dragon. They are placing it in that nest. They'll secure it there and remove some of those attachment points before moving it toward the egress platform.
Now we can see some waters held in what looks like a kind of like a bucketed area there underneath the side hatch. That is the location of where the main parachutes are stored. So all 4 of those main parachutes are tightly packed and placed in that cubby, basically, and we can see water draining from it now. The location of the drogue parachutes is up near where that harness is secured above the side hatch there at the top.
And it's always interesting for me to see those attachment points because, before seeing these missions or before working at NASA, you would always assume that the parachutes would just come from the top of the spacecraft. So not always the case. Looks like Dragon is getting comfortably seated in the nest. Again, things moving along pretty quickly. A few minutes ahead of the ideal timeline here. Now just 30 minutes since splashdown. And we already have the spacecraft on the recovery vessel. Again, this recovery vessel being named Shannon after Shannon Walker.
Dragon, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks. Stand by for translation to the egress platform.
So at this point in time, the Crew-5 crew members are feeling a different sensation now. So when they splash down, of course, they're greeted with gravity once again, but there was an additional sensation of being in the water, and now that they are on the recovery vessel, it is clearly more secure than that. Or not more secure, a lot less motion than being in the water. Of course, they're still on a boat, so there's a little bit.
Yeah, and after these connection lines are removed, we'll be looking forward to hatch opening. Of course, we have to move the Dragon to that egress platform first, but Dragon will stay in this hatch, or in this nest, I should say, until it returns to port. So while the astronauts will be flown back to Earth, or they're on Earth, but once they're flown back to solid ground tonight, it does take a little bit of a journey for the spacecraft itself to make it back to port, and it's going to remain in that nest the entire time.
So following along with the recovery procedures, we're looking at roughly 5 to 6 minutes until we get that side hatch open. Once again, assuming that all the checkouts, of course, the capsule, the Dragon capsule itself is equalizing the pressure inside to match the pressure outside as well. And ultimately, the crew is just continuing to monitor the progress. They're using those screens in front of them, but they remain comfortable in their seats. We continue to flow that nitrox air through the suits in order to keep them comfortable. Of course, I always like to say that that air is the same stuff that scuba divers use to, in their breathing equipment. So that cooled air is certainly an additional piece of comfort for the crew during this process, because as we said before, right now there's nothing for them to do but patiently wait for the translation of the Dragon capsule into that more forward position, as Leah was talking about, where we will be able to open the side hatch.
And again, obviously, we've got Dragon Endurance on the left and that view on the right coming from inside the spacecraft itself. Our 4 Crew-5 members, as you mentioned, patiently waiting. No action on their part, just continuing to monitor, and as they are now aboard recovery vessel Shannon. Like I said, this is named after Shannon Walker, NASA astronaut who flew on the Crew-1 mission. There's also another SpaceX recovery ship named Megan, after Megan MacArthur, who flew on Crew-2.
So once again, we're standing by for the capsule for that forward translation to the egress platform, which is where we will be able to open Dragon's side hatch and ultimately allow the crew to egress.
And as we've mentioned tonight, the crew will board a helicopter that lands on that helipad where Chelsea was talking about watching Splashdown from. They will be transported back to shore tonight. Additionally, along with them, there will be a couple of more helicopters that take off and take some of the additional visiting personnel, including Chelsea, who gave us the report from the boat. And not slow and steady, but this is the last major move for Dragon. After this, we will wait patiently for hatch opening. And there you can see that platform I've been discussing. Just behind it is a little hallway. There's some medical checkout rooms for the crew members to get those, as I mentioned, very nominal and very planned medical checkouts now that they're back on Earth.
We were able to see the recovery team hosing the capsule down. We're using fresh water to do that, of course, to help minimize any corrosion to the capsule as we do reuse these. So basically just trying to give it a freshwater bath as it is on the deck. We're also able to see that the recovery team on the platform has their personal respirators or breathers. They are going to do an additional hypergol sweep that is to basically triple check that there are no fumes for the MMH or NTO, that monomethylhydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide. Those are the propellants that are on board the Dragon capsule for its on-orbit propulsion system, and they are not fumes that are you're able to breathe. They're quite toxic to people, so we'll see them perform an additional check.
So once we do open the hatch, the first smiling face that Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna will see will be a SpaceX medical doctor, just to check on them, see if they are ready for egress. We hope to get some views shortly thereafter of our crew members. And here is a great view of the hatch itself. Again, next major milestone will be for hatch open.
Absolutely. So as we mentioned before, while Dragon's top hatch is what is used to connect to the space station, or the forward hatch, the astronauts are going to egress from that hatch right there. That's the side hatch. And before opening the hatch, the spacecraft's cabin pressure is equalized with the outside environment. Then once that side hatch is opened, that will be the crew's first breath of fresh earthly air since boarding Dragon at the start of their mission back in October.
Now, right here, you can see SpaceX crew members. We also have some NASA crew members on the spacecraft itself, or on the recovery ship itself. They are on the spacecraft too. But letting these SpaceX teams take care of preparing Dragon for hatch open. And once that happens, it's important to note again, Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna will be getting that assistance from the recovery teams when they're exiting the capsule. It is the same process for any returning long-duration crew members, because returning to a gravity environment can challenge our vestibular system. That's responsible for maintaining our balance and motion. And of course, safety is always the number one priority with this operation. So you'll see Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna helped out of the capsule, assisted a few feet to the medical quarters aboard the boat. And if you've ever watched crews return on a Soyuz, or even previously with Dragon, this is the same process as when they are carried from the capsule to waiting chairs. And then in the case of a Soyuz, there's a waiting medical tent. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this is also the time period where that time-critical cargo can be recovered from the spacecraft, with the remainder waiting until the ship is back in port. But some of those cold stowage items, they're able to get that back to the investigators and the researchers as soon as tonight, so they're able to analyze that. And then once the ship and the capsule return, the recovery team will perform some additional inspections before loading Dragon onto a flatbed truck at the SpaceX facility in Cape Canaveral for post-processing and, of course, potential future reflight.
So we're about 5 or 6 minutes away from crew egress. We can see that the personal protective equipment.
Dragon, stand by for a side hatch opening in approximately the next 60 seconds.
I'm looking at Rick right now.
So we can see that those, and there it is, side hatch open on Dragon Endurance.
First time since it was closed last October, sending these 4 crew members on their journey to the International Space Station. And in that view on the right, you can see that SpaceX medical doctor getting that first check, making sure everyone is feeling all right back here on planet Earth before we begin helping those crew members out of the capsule.
On the left-hand side of the screen, we can see the recovery team members placing a protective frame around the interior of the hatch. As I mentioned before, of course, we reuse our Dragon capsules, and so really to preserve the integrity of that hatch, which of course is important, we put some protective framing around there to help make sure that there is no damage incurred to the side hatch as the crew members are exiting or egressing from the capsule.
I'm still able to get some notes from Chelsea. She said there's a big round of applause on the recovery vessel now that the hatch is open. A really great moment. Really signifies the end of a successful mission.
As we mentioned before, that the individual that you see there on the right-hand side of your screen between pilot Josh Cassada and Commander Nicole Mann, that is the SpaceX medical doctor, always the first person to pop in. Basically just looking for 4 thumbs up from the crew members to indicate that they're feeling all right and to egress the capsule.
We'll also get a chance for one of the photographers. We do have photographers on the recovery ship as well that are able to document the splashdown itself. So, as I mentioned, going to get that shot. Hopefully 4 smiling faces.
I'm sure they're using a wide angle lens to capture everyone's smiling faces. And the other thing you can note there on the exterior of the Dragon capsule is the evidence of re-entry. You can see there with some slight scorch marks on the thermal protective system there. It was a very pristine white on launch day, and within the last hour, of course, it re-entered the atmosphere and splashed down, and we can see that evidence there on the exterior of the capsule.
Yeah, the heat shield obviously did a great job bringing back our crew members safely. And this is the second flight for this capsule, so there is the opportunity for it to be taken back and refurbished or polished up, prepared for another future flight.
So for those of you just recently joined, the crew is the Crew-5 astronauts and cosmonaut are now on board the recovery vessel, and we are awaiting their egress from Dragon Endurance. They will come out one at a time, assisted by the recovery team members. As you can imagine, after spending 157 days in space, gravity might not feel super awesome right now, and so we will assist them just to make sure that they are safe, making their first motions back on Earth.
You can see them passing out of the capsule. Those are the tablets that we noticed earlier the crew members wear around their upper thigh. They're able to monitor procedures on those tablets. So they're starting to pass those out of the hatch. I think I've seen all 4 come through, and that was a footrest. Those can be detached, obviously, here on Earth or whether on orbit to have a little bit more space in the capsule. So they'll remove those 4 footrests to allow teams to more easily enter Dragon and help these crew members back on board the ship. Again, this view here in Mission Control in Hawthorne, California. Teams at SpaceX monitoring the return and arrival of Crew-5. Coming up on about 45 minutes since splashdown tonight. The side hatch is open. Crew members are being prepared for egress. Everything has moved really smoothly tonight so far.
Once again, that is a view looking toward the side hatch. That view has Commander Nicole Mann on the left-hand side and pilot Josh Cassada on the right-hand side. So they're most likely debriefing the crew members on, what to expect the next steps for their next steps.
And helping them get out of their seatbelts, just making things easier for that egress. We saw those foot restraints, or the foot rests were removed from the spacecraft. So just making things easier for our crew members. As you can see, their visors are up. They are hopefully pretty comfortable in those custom fitted suits, as well as those seat inserts that are custom fitted as well. Again, these are SpaceX team members. It helps distinguish due to the different colored flight suits they're wearing. So they're wearing black suits, and typically when you see someone in a royal blue suit, that is a NASA team member. So we saw a couple of those from the other view, but right now this is mainly the SpaceX crew inside Dragon helping the, and there's a few of those NASA team members as we mentioned.
That's a great shot because you can really see that scorching on the thermal protection system, as I was talking about earlier, that evidence of re-entry. The exterior of the capsule got up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and I think it's quite beautiful to see returned capsules, of course, because it's just that evidence of spaceflight
and success.
Absolutely,
just a slight toasting. And just a reminder, of course, once these astronauts are helped out of the capsule, we'll see them being placed likely on stretchers, again, helping them regain their Earth legs. They'll then move into those routine medical checks. Those happen on the boat. And shortly after those, they will board a ready and waiting helicopter to head back to land. Once they come back to Florida, there will be a NASA spacecraft waiting for them to bring them back to Houston. They'll be able to reunite with their friends and family. And it looks like our egress is beginning with NASA astronaut Josh Cassada, pilot of Dragon Endurance on Crew-5. His first space flight coming home with 157 days.
I believe there is a almost like a little slide that is secured to the exterior of the capsule and to the egress deck, basically to bridge that gap. Yeah, we could see Josh sliding out of the frame there, and that really just helps them get out of the capsule, not only from the standpoint of making it easier on them, but also preserving the hardware around that, the hardware of the side hatch as well. Of course, all those buttons that we see there on the crew displays are all now completely deactivated now that the Dragon capsule is recovered and secure on the recovery vessel. So even if somebody were to bump one with their elbow or their head, nothing would happen. Those have all been safed.
So Josh Cassada, NASA astronaut, our first crew member out of the spacecraft. Looks like those SpaceX team members are back inside Dragon Endurance, and they are helping. I doubt we'll hear any more of those calls from the crew to the ground now that the hatch is open, but every time I hear it, I pause a little bit.
Yep. If I had to guess, that was probably that recovery team member accidentally bumping the armrest comm panel, which is the comm panel that they use to basically push to talk while they're in their seats. So if I had to guess, that was an accidental bump there. So it looks like the second individual to egress from the Dragon capsule will be Commander Nicole Mann. And there she goes.
Also 157 days for Nicole, being that it was her first space flight.
I would imagine for Koichi, who you mentioned earlier, has, you'll have to refresh my memory, over 500 days now logged in space?
Yes, exactly 505
There
today.
we go.
So
I imagine this part is never easy, but he's very familiar, knows what to expect in terms of the change in mobility now that he's back on Earth.
Commander of Crew-5, Nicole Mann, also became the first Native American woman to live on the International Space Station. So a real moment of pride there, I'm sure. And you can see her being helped to those medical quarters. Again, all nominal, all pre-planned checks. Just an opportunity to make sure the crew is feeling good before they take that helicopter ride back to shore.
Exactly, and as you mentioned earlier, all the crew members are effectively placed on what basically looks like a stretcher, and that's just, again, really to assist them because returning to Earth after, as we said before, 157 days in space can be pretty tough on the body, and of course, in order to keep them safe, we want to assist them. So all four of the crew members are placed on a wheelie bed and rolled back to those medical quarters, as you said, for their evaluations with the flight doctors.
So now our NASA astronauts are out of the spacecraft. We are awaiting egress of Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina, her first space flight, and as we mentioned, seasoned veteran Koichi Wakata of the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. And this looks like it may be Anna.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, that slide, we have a great view of that slide now. Really helps the crew in this egress procedure.
Oh, this is probably Koichi, judging by, I can see that Japanese flag on that team member right there on the right.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it looked like, yeah, that looks like Koichi. It looks like they were pulling from seat 1, so yeah, that would have been Koichi's.
Oh, I can see a
Look
smile
at that
on his
smile.
face. Definitely not his first rodeo. That means our last mission specialist and crew member to egress today will be Anna Kikina. In that far right seat, we can still see one of those SpaceX crew members inside helping her out of the seat restraints. Not even an hour since Splashdown, and we are almost having all 4 crew members out of the spacecraft.
That's right. Splashdown occurred off the coast of Tampa, Florida at 9:02 p.m. Eastern Time. So yeah, we're just shy of an hour.
Again, we had great weather reports as we prepared to splash down at Tampa, and we even got pretty good views of how calm the ocean appeared to be as the crew members awaited the recovery ship to arrive.
And for those that might be wondering, at the top of the capsule there was a curved line. That was the line indicating where the nose cone was separated from the primary structure. So it looks like Anna Kikina, our cosmonaut on board Crew-5, is about to make her way down the fun slide and egress Dragon Endurance, which once again made its second splashdown.
Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina, our final crew member to egress tonight. Again, her first space flight. She will also have those same medical checks before flying back to Russia.
Look at that smile as well.
And that is all 4 of our crew members. Now that Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna are safely back home on Earth and getting checked out by the medical teams, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their return. Again, this all kicked off on October 5th, 2022. October 5 for Crew-5 from historic launch pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. After successful liftoff and separation from Falcon 9, Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna made a 28-hour flight on board Dragon 2, the International Space Station. Since arriving at the space station, they spent nearly 6 months as members of Expeditions 67 and 68, executing science experiments, spacewalks, and repairs while aboard the orbiting laboratory.
Their journey home began about 19 hours ago on March 10th when they closed the forward hatch to the Dragon capsule and undocked from the International Space Station at 11:20 p.m. Pacific time. After 4 successful departure burns and a phasing burn to line up their orbit, Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna rested for a few hours before waking up and to prepare for their re-entry. We jettisoned Dragon's trunk and performed our final on-orbit maneuver, the deorbit burn, at 5:11 p.m. Pacific time to send the Dragon on its path home. The spacecraft re-entered Earth's atmosphere and slowed its descent with successful deployments of 2 drogue parachutes and 4 healthy mains, with the final splashdown occurring off the coast of Florida at 6:02 p.m. Pacific time. Following that successful splashdown, we saw SpaceX recovery experts move in and prepare Dragon Endurance for its lift onto the recovery vessel. And just a little less than an hour ago, 58 minutes to be exact.
Wow.
Following splashdown, we saw Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna make their way out of the Dragon capsule and into the recovery ship's medical facilities, safe and sound.
So next up, they will catch that helicopter flight back to shore. They will transfer to aircraft that will take them home. Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna will take a NASA plane for the short flight to Houston, and later Anna will fly back to Russia. They will be reunited with families to bring an end to this mission. Of course, as always, it's been an honor and a privilege to share their journey with all of you as we continue this new era in human spaceflight.
The return today marks the end of a direct handover that we just executed after successfully launching the Crew-6 mission to the space station just a little over a week, actually, about a week ago. It has been an incredible honor and joy to share this mission with the public. All the teams from SpaceX and NASA continue to work hard to keep America leading the world in human spaceflight. Continue to follow SpaceX and NASA online and on social media for updates for the very latest on crew and cargo flights to and from the International Space Station.
And we will continue to share the progress of Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna on social media as they travel back home. We also have a post-Splashdown media telecon coming up at approximately 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where leadership from NASA, JAXA, and SpaceX will share updates as we conclude this successful mission. So we say thanks one more time for tuning in and cheering on Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna as they made their return back to Earth. So from all of us at NASA and SpaceX, welcome home, Crew-5, and we'll see you next time.
For generations, we have dreamed about a place to live and work in space, a space station. And right now, 260 miles above us, that dream is a reality. We dreamed that life up there would benefit life down here. That dream has come true. Can research on board the space station lead to cleaner drinking water on Earth? Can it help farmers produce better crops? Can it inspire a generation of students? Can it even save a life? The answer to these questions is yes. It already has. As the work aboard the International Space Station begins to reach its potential, the benefits to humanity are evident. These are just a few of the stories from people who have realized those benefits in their own words.
Is that 2? You say 2? I found a big lump in the side of my face, and I kept going to doctor after doctor. And I was in so much pain at that time. I was like dying in bed. It hurt so bad. I've never been in so much pain. I went for my first MRI, and then it showed up with like hundreds of tumors all over. And then they sent me to, not Dr. Sutherland, but someone who works in his office. And he thought it was neurofibromatosis, which I have.
We didn't even realize what that was. We'd always heard it called the elephant man disease. There's different types of neurofibromatosis. One of them, the tumors